Have you ever prayed or wished or hoped for something to happen in your life, but it never came true? We all have prayed for something miraculous to happen to us at one time or another, ranging from something big like winning the lottery to something small like doing well on a test or in an athletic event. I would guess that at some point in time, we have all been disappointed when a prayer didn't come true. Sometimes an unanswered prayer can leave us with the feeling that God isn't listening, that He doesn't have time for our prayers, or that He doesn't even exist at all. In late May of 2002, I was sitting alone in the training room when the phone rang. It was my wife telling me she had received word from the doctor's office that her pregnancy test had come back positive. We were going to be parents. When we got the news, Cheryl was only 3 weeks pregnant. Her first ultrasound and our first glimpse at our child was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The 2 weeks following the news of our impending parenthood were very exciting. We were wondering if we would be blessed with a boy or a girl. We discussed names, parenting philosophies, and what baby supplies we would need. At this early stage, my thoughts were less of my unborn child and more of how I would maintain my hobbies and free time after the child arrived. Sure, I had heard all the comments of how a newborn changes everything, but I've always lived life my own way, and I was confident that I would figure something out. Finally, the day of the first ultrasound arrived. At the last minute, I was required to be here at St. Andrews for a meeting. So again, I'm in the training room, and the phone rings. It's Shara, but this time she's crying. My heart dropped. My initial thoughts were that we lost the baby. I asked Shara what was wrong. She told me she was calling from the doctor's office. Then she paused for what seemed like an eternity. Between the sobs, she mustered 2 words. There's 3. My response, 3 what? Before the words finished coming out of my mouth, I knew what she meant. A burning sensation began in the pit of my stomach. My wife was pregnant with triplets. The next 2 weeks were not nearly as enjoyable as the previous 2. Shara and I seemed to argue over anything and everything. We argued over how we were going to pay for 3 kids, 3 sets of clothes, 3 times the food, 3 college tuitions. The door was closing on my life as I envisioned it. The only statement that seemed to diffuse our arguments came from our doctor. He said that at only 5 weeks of pregnancy with multiple embryos, it is very common for 1 or more of the embryos to be absorbed by the woman's body. There was a high percentage that this pregnancy would still just result in a single child. I felt very strongly that this would be the best case scenario. But I still couldn't help but feel like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. I pray often. One hot June afternoon, I sat in my car at a red light. There I prayed to God that if there was any way to relieve me of this great burden, if there was any way to take away the mounting pressure in my life associated with this pregnancy, to please give me that relief. To make this perfectly clear, I was asking God to have 2 of the 3 embryos conveniently absorb into my wife's body, as our doctor had described, and give us only a single child. Over the following 15 weeks, a number of extreme changes occurred. Shara's belly began to grow quickly, very quickly. This was also the time of numerous doctor's visits and countless ultrasounds. There was more detail revealed with each passing week. It began by seeing small gray blips on a screen that represented the heartbeats of the triplets. Then we began to see definition of the arms, legs, spines, and heads. The more time passed, the more we realized that there would be no natural reduction of these embryos from 3 to 2 or 1. But each week I began to root more and more for these little guys. Instead of becoming inconveniences, they were becoming my children. And I was beginning the process of becoming a parent. I was falling in love with my children. By 21 weeks of pregnancy, the babies were beginning to kick. An ultrasound revealed that we were having 2 boys and 1 girl. We even knew where they were positioned in Shara's belly. This allowed us to name them, to talk to them individually. My daughter, Briar, would kick feverishly when I would talk to her through the upper left area of Cher's belly. It was the highlight of my day. She wasn't even born yet, but she was already Daddy's little girl. The exponential growth of our triplets was taking its toll on Cher's body, however. At 21 weeks, she was told by her doctor she would remain on bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy to alleviate some of the stress on her body. A full-term pregnancy is 40 weeks. At 22 weeks, when we were at the hospital having an ultrasound, we noticed that the doctor was spending significantly more time examining Briar than he had the two boys. Then the doctor said the words that turned our world upside down. Your daughter is suffering from a condition called low placental blood flow. We were told that our daughter wasn't growing as fast as her brothers, and it was due to a lack of oxygen and nutrient-rich blood into her placenta, which threatened her life. We left the hospital, arrived home, and held each other as we cried and prayed for our daughter's health. After a very long and emotional 2 weeks, we had the follow-up ultrasound to determine the health status of our daughter. Her condition had worsened. Low placental blood flow is a chronic condition. Its effects can range from physical and mental birth defects to death. We asked if there was anything we could do to help improve Briar's chances. The doctor said that our best hope was to put my wife in the hospital on 24-hour-a-day IV fluid and oxygen for the remainder of the pregnancy to potentially help increase the blood circulation to our daughter. It would mean that Cheryl would spend the next 7 weeks living in a hospital bed. A few days after Cheryl was admitted to the hospital, we had a meeting with a neonatologist to advise us of the health of the triplets. He told us that our daughter would probably live no longer than 3 more weeks because of her faulty placenta. I could tell my wife's heart was breaking. One night I left St. Andrews and went home to eat before driving to Christiana Hospital to visit Cheryl. The emotional stress of having my wife in the hospital was getting to me. The house felt particularly cold, dark, and empty that night. I noticed that a pile of baby clothes that we had received as gifts and decided that I would fold them and put them away in the baby's room. As I folded the pile of clothes, I came across a newborn outfit for a little girl. It was white pajamas with little pink pigs on it. I remember laying the outfit on my leg and imagining that my daughter was there. I pictured her looking up at me and smiling. She would be happy, knowing that she was safe and protected. Those happy thoughts were brief, as I realized that one day soon, I might have to take all of those little girl outfits and box them away for good. The thought of losing my daughter while I stood by powerless to help her had overwhelmed me. I crumbled into a ball on the couch and cried harder than I've ever cried in my entire life. Why was this happening? It was then that I remembered my earlier prayer asking God for relief. I remember telling God that 3 babies at once would be too difficult. Was this God's way of answering my prayer? I pleaded to God, ignore that prayer. It isn't what I want now. I don't care how hard it's going to be, just give me my children safe and healthy. I called Sharon in the middle of my emotional breakdown, and she comforted me. She said that God had a plan, and no matter what that plan was, that it would be for the best because God knew what was best for us. There I decided to let all of my anxiety and feelings of helplessness go and follow my wife's lead and have faith in God's plan. From then on, we prayed that our children would hold on another week. By week 31, the contractions had grown stronger, and my wife's body couldn't hold on anymore. On the morning of December 3rd at 9:30 in the morning, the triplets were born, and one by one, Caden, Briar, and then Tyler were examined by their own personal team of doctors. And although they were hooked up to monitors and oxygen and were very small, our prayers had come true. Our babies were healthy, including our 2-pound, 6-ounce little girl. One morning, shortly after the triplets came home from the hospital, I awoke to the sound of my clock radio. I was extremely tired and turned off the alarm and turned and looked across the bed at a sea of 3 children that lay between my wife and me. As I mustered up the energy to get out of bed, I looked down at my son Tyler, who was sleeping nestled into my chest. He had one hand resting under his cheek, and the other hand firmly grasping the front of my t-shirt. As I leaned down to kiss his cheek goodbye, I could almost hear him say, "Don't go just yet, Daddy. Stay a little while longer." So I laid down my head, and as I fell back asleep, I realized that even though last year at this time, I never would have asked God to give me this life is exactly what I've always wanted. And God knew that all along. So today I thank God for answered and unanswered prayers. Those were my words almost 11 years ago. And since I wrote that talk, a lot has changed in my life. The triplets are growing up quickly. I've traded late night feedings and diaper changes for soccer practice, homework, and learning about who is asking who to the dance. The bedtime stories about princesses and aliens have been slowly replaced with questions about life and the real world around them. Nowhere else was this transition from innocence more apparent than one afternoon a few years ago that Briar and I had one of our daddy-daughter dates. Every summer, Briar goes to the fabric store with Grandma, and they spend a couple of days of quality time together, laughing and sewing, until they complete a very pretty dress for Briar. Once they are done, my job is to take Briar out on a date and show her off. On one of these dates, after a nice lunch, Briar and I went for a walk outside on a beautiful, warm, and sunny day. After a few minutes of walking and holding hands, my then 9-year-old daughter looks up at me and asks the question, "Daddy, what does it feel like to fall in love?" We spent the next 45 minutes talking about what it feels like to have butterflies in your stomach, how alive love can make you feel. And I told the story about how I met and fell in love with her mother. We also talked about friendship and respect. Most importantly, we talked about how she should expect a boy to treat her. And what the ramifications would be for that boy. If he did not meet her very high standards. Moments like these make me realize how quickly time has passed, and they force me to take inventory on what I've learned over the past 11 years of parenthood. I've learned that being tired won't kill you, but it will make you stutter, forget the names of people you've worked with for years, and drop things for no reason. The first year after the triplets were born, my wife and I probably averaged 3 hours of sleep a night. And while I survived it, I'm pretty sure I received some form of permanent brain damage from it. However, I can also remember sitting on the couch with my wife at 3 o'clock in the morning with the children in our laps for one of their many middle-of-the-night feedings. We joked, sang made-up songs to our children, and generally went crazy together. I also remember feeling strongly during those times that all I would ever need in life was on that couch. I've learned that my life, if I wanted true happiness, shouldn't resemble anyone else's life. Students that have been around me in the training room in the afternoon see this short, stocky weightlifter with a strange sense of humor who touches everyone's sweaty feet. And he has this beautiful wife who teaches Taekwondo, and she milks cows. And they live in the middle of a field in a house that is filled with so many children. And it is constantly loud from laughter and singing and playing and wrestling and arguing. And, "Mommy, tell Caden to stop touching me." But it is also filled with God, and it is filled with love. So students see this person I am and think, okay, this guy, he's pretty weird. But he seems really happy. After having triplets, I knew that my life was never going to resemble the term normal. My wife and I had always planned on having a normal family structure, but God blessed us with 3 children at once. Then 5 years later, just as we were regaining our sanity, God blessed us with a 4th child, Chase. Then as our children grew, my wife and I wanted them to have a different understanding of and connection to the world around them, to their health, to their food. So we got chickens, then goats, then a cow, and then a garden. And now we have a home where the children take care of animals and plants, and they get dirty, and they learn about life, and they grow. If God had granted me the normal life I wanted so badly to have, I never would have been part of this amazing adventure that He had in store for me instead. I've learned that the obstacles in our lives, the fear that lives in our heart, and the mountains we are forced to climb are not there to hurt us or punish us. They are there to reveal us. They reveal our character. They reveal our strength. They reveal the people willing to climb those mountains with us. In athletics, there is no growth, no development of strength without first overcoming a resistance. Lifting a weight, running up a hill, pulling an oar against water. A life without obstacles, a life without challenges isn't an easy life. It's a life where you'll never know all of the amazing things you're capable of being. Without having felt the fear of losing my daughter, without having lived the sleepless nights of parenting triplets and doing it all while side by side with my wife, I never would have known the man I was capable of being or how truly extraordinary and unbreakably strong the bonds of love and family can be. So my advice to you is, don't attempt to live a normal life. The world needs the abnormal, the weird, the strange, the amazing, and the beautifully unique life that you were meant to live. Don't work hard because you feel like you were supposed to, but invest your heart and soul into the people you love and the things that inspire you. And when you feel lonely and tired and afraid, and the world around you seems so cold and dark, have faith, because the greatest adventure of your entire life might be just about to begin.